2024 is finally coming to an end. I can't believe how fast this year has gone. At the beginning of the year, I was quite skeptical with some of the horror releases. I think we had films like Night Swim, Imaginary. We didn't have too many amazing releases for the first half of 2024, but I think the second half really proved me wrong. It showed that we actually did have a really good year for horror. I feel like we haven't had as many releases as in previous years, but we have had some really good ones, as well as some that haven't been great. I ended up watching 50 new horror releases from this year. I thought I would go through each one, starting from my lowest ranked and ending with my favourites from the year. I would also be really interested in seeing if maybe some things that I've rated lower would be higher on your list, or some of my favourites may be really low on yours. So let me know if you agree or disagree with my ratings. Just because I rate something low, it doesn't mean it's bad, it is just my personal preference. So coming in at number 50 is Invited. This is a film I actually found on Tubi and decided to watch when I was ill. It is a found footage horror film. It is one that's set on a screen. Invited follows a mother who attends her daughter's wedding over Zoom alongside other friends and family. They are all in the call together, but none of them really know her new husband-to-be that well. Strange things start happening at the ceremony, and the family and friends soon realise there may be some more sinister intentions for the big day. The acting in this one was not good. I feel bad because it's obviously a smaller production, but I do find with found footage, I always say that you don't need a big budget or a high production to do a good found footage horror film. The script and where the storyline went was really weird and not in a good way. At number 49, we have a bigger release from this year, and that is The Strangers Chapter 1. This is a reboot of the original The Strangers. I feel like with this one, so many of you will probably have the same disappointment as me, especially if you love the original like I do. I saw this one in the cinema. I was skeptical, but I still had some high-ish expectations. I wasn't expecting it to be perfect, but I wasn't expecting it to be as bad as it was. The Strangers Chapter 1 follows a couple whose car breaks down in an unfamiliar small town. They end up having to get an Airbnb in the middle of nowhere. Soon, a group of masked strangers turn up at the door and won't leave them alone. My main problem with this film is that not much happens. We spend so much time just watching the main characters looking scared, standing in the woods, hiding. It's just like nothing really happens until the end. The story starts okay-ish, and then there is just a bunch of filler, and then the end. It makes me really concerned on what part 2 and 3 is going to be like, considering this one was basically just a whole lot of nothing. If there are going to be 2 more films, then it's almost like they could have just been put into 1 or 2. Obviously, I don't know what the second and the third one are going to be like. Hopefully, there's going to be a lot more happening, because this one really wasn't very good. Personally, I was quite disappointed with the performances. I think the characters fell flat. They just weren't interesting at all. They could have put a bit more character development, a bit more of a background in, done something a bit more exciting at least. I'm not even going to get started with the plot holes. This film felt like it was about 10 hours long. I won't be rewatching this one. I will go and see the second and third installment just because I'm curious. Also, the original isn't even that old, so it was so unnecessary to have a remake, especially because the original is really good as well. I just feel like the film industry is so obsessed with horror reboots and remakes at the moment. So next up is Night Swim. I gave this one a 2 out of 10. I didn't actually see this one in the cinema. I waited till streaming because I heard that it wasn't the best, and I found that was the case. This is a Blumhouse production. I feel like this year hasn't been good for Blumhouse. They have brought out quite a few different horror films. They've all been bad or mid. Nothing memorable at all, which is a shame because I used to look forward to Blumhouse films coming out, but now I kind of just already have this preconceived notion that it's going to be overly cringy, probably have bad CGI, and probably not have the best script or storyline either. It's such a shame because in the past they've produced some incredible films like Get Out, Hush, Insidious, Cam, both Creep 1 and 2, and just so many other great ones, but it just seems like these days they're more focused on how many films they can get out rather than the actual quality of them. A family move into a new house with a swimming pool. They chose this house in hopes that the pool would provide physical therapy for the husband who suffers a painful illness. Soon the family realizes strange things are happening and suspects there may be a more sinister presence at their new house. This one just wasn't very good. I feel like Blumhouse are making their horror films not for horror fans, they're making them for just like the average casual cinema goer. So next is The Watchers, or The Watched in the UK because they changed the title. This is actually based off a book by A.M. Shine. I read the book in preparation for the film. It was on my TBR list anyway, so I was quite excited to read that and then do a comparison. I personally absolutely loved the book. I found it absolutely terrifying. It was so creepy throughout. It is one of the few books that has actually scared me at moments and made me kind of look around the room. In The Watchers, we follow a woman travelling with a parrot, but her car ends up breaking down in the middle of nowhere surrounded by nature. She makes her way through an unknown forest only to find a strange glass building and a group of people. They tell her to quickly get inside and explain that there are terrifying, stalking creatures outside stopping them from leaving the forest. I found the film very underwhelming and quite bad. I think having the book to compare it to probably didn't help its case because the book was so good, but I do find it such a shame because the book was so creepy and it just didn't relate in the film. If they went for more of a dark, gritty route, they definitely could have made it a really, really scary horror film. If you haven't seen this film, then read the book first, because I don't know if after watching the film you'll kind of be like imagining those characters in the book and it won't be as scary. And there also is a second book that has just come out this year, so I am excited to read that. So next we have a sequel, and that is The Platform 2. I rated this one a 4 out of 10. This follows prisoners inside a dystopian prison where they get fed by a moving platform. The people at the top get a full buffet, but greedy inmates overeat and the prisoners at the bottom end up starving with nothing left. A new prisoner decides to make changes. After really enjoying the first film, I was quite excited to watch this one, but it did end up being quite bad. I do still enjoy the original concept of the dystopian prison. The storyline wasn't interesting or captivating. It was almost like a copy of the first story but just made worse. You may as well just watch the first one because the second one does absolutely nothing to the story. It had some really bad CGI and characters that I just didn't care about. I was hoping it would go down the same route as the first one, being quite disturbing and gritty, but this one just kind of felt like it was trying to do those things, but it just wasn't executed very well. So next up is, of course, another Blumhouse production, and that is Imaginary. I gave this one a 4 out of 10, but I did make some really cute earrings to wear to the cinema. A little girl moves house with her stepmother and finds a stuffed bear called Chauncey. It isn't long before her stepmom starts to realise the girl is behaving in odd ways, but when she questions her about it, the girl blames it on the bear. This is just another film that fell flat. I think the premise could be quite interesting for a fun, silly, cheesy horror film, and I thought maybe it would kind of go down that route, but it just ended up being quite cringy. It dragged on for far too long. The ending didn't make sense at all. It's almost like the ending was like a complete different film. There are so many plot holes, and as I said about Night Swim, this one just felt rushed too. Next up we have, you guessed it, another Blumhouse Productions. We have Afraid, which I rated 4 out of 10, and I would have rated this lower, but my cinema experience was quite good and I have a good memory. I went to see this with one of my best friends and we had a good time. Although the film was awful and I will never go to rewatch it again, it still was kind of entertaining at the time. I feel like sometimes it is just the company you're with that can make you enjoy things more. Afraid follows a family who gets selected to try a new at-home AI system, but of course things go wrong. This is one of the classic AI fights back films, and I think with the rise of AI we will be seeing a lot more films like this over the next few years. Next up is a film I've rated 5 out of 10, and I'm so sorry because I know so many people love this film, but that is Cuckoo. For me personally, I found this film quite confusing and a bit boring. I found the characters to be quite unlikable but just not memorable either. This was a secret screening at the cinema, so I didn't know what I was going to watch going in. I did think it could be this film, but I didn't know what to expect, and I think I was hoping for more. Cuckoo follows a young woman who has recently moved to the German Alps with her family. She soon realises there may be more to this quiet town than she first thought, after she ends up being pursued by a strange woman. I'm not sure if I just didn't understand this one, so if you enjoyed this film then please let me know what you enjoyed most about it, so when I do eventually rewatch it I can kind of look out for those and hopefully appreciate it a bit more. So the next film is The Exorcism, and I also rated that one a 5 out of 10. This follows a former addict who is playing a lead role in an upcoming horror film. He is struggling on set in general, but things slowly get a lot worse. I actually saw this on a solo cinema trip where I booked myself a double bill with another film that is a little bit further on in this list. I did like the idea of this film being set on the set of an exorcism film, but it just wasn't really for me. I'm not always a massive fan of exorcism films. I feel like they can end up being a carbon copy of each other. Although this one did have some original elements which I did appreciate, I think I have just seen too many things like this to really enjoy it that much. This is also the second Russell Crowe exorcism movie we've had in like 2 years. To be honest, this film just isn't really memorable to me. I do remember parts of it, but I do remember being quite bored at the cinema. So the next film is a film that went straight to Shudder, and that is Azrael. I may be saying that wrong. I rated this one a 5 out of 10. This is set in a dystopian reality when a woman must fight for survival against other people as well as an ancient evil. So this film did come to Shudder in the second half of 2024. It stars Samara Weaving, which is one of the main reasons I felt inclined to watch it. This is a film with very little dialogue, which I don't always mind, but I felt like this film was just very average. The performances from the cast were really good, but nothing really stood out enough to make me want to rewatch. Next we have Trunk Locked In. I also rated this one a 5 out of 10. This is a really random film that I watched at the start of the year. I saw it on streaming and decided to give it a go. Maybe I should rate this one a little bit lower just because I really don't remember much from it, so that probably says something. But I do personally enjoy a single location kind of trapped horror film. I find they're quite easy watches. They're usually tense but usually don't have a whole lot going on if it is literally just all in one location, especially if it is in such a small location. Trunk Locked In follows a medical student who wakes up confused and stuck inside the boot of a random car. She tries to place together what happened, but her memory is foggy. Next we have Subservience, which I rated 5 out of 10 too. A family struggles when the wife becomes sick, so they decide to get some help for the family in the form of a new AI housekeeper. Everything seems to be going smoothly until their AI helper becomes self-aware. I actually recently watched this one because it looked like a cheesy, easy watch, which it did end up being, but it was quite bad. I was drawn to it because it is about AI. This does star Megan Fox. I love her in Jennifer's Body, so I wanted to see what she was like in this film. So next we have Something in the Water. I have also rated this one a 5 out of 10. A group of friends reunite and go on a trip for one of their weddings. They go out on a boat trip and end up getting stranded. Their boat starts sinking, and worst of all, they are surrounded by hungry sharks. This was actually the other film in my solo trip double bill when I went to see the Exorcism as well. I watched this one second and actually found it quite entertaining. I don't know if it's because I watched The Exorcism first and I found that quite boring, so this was kind of like a fun breath of fresh air. I do love a cheesy shark film. This one has so many plot holes, you definitely can't take it seriously, but I do feel like that is the case with at least 80% of shark horror films, so what do you expect? The next one isn't completely a horror film, it's more of a spooky film, and that is Beetle Juice, Beetle Juice. I also rated this one a 5 out of 10. Lydia is all grown up now and in a predicament where her daughter finds a portal to the afterlife. She is still being haunted by Beetlejuice, but now
a whole lot of other chaos starts.
This was definitely one of my biggest disappointments of the year. I really liked the first Beetle Juice, but this was just nothing like it. It had so much going on, it was so hard to keep up. I feel like there was like so many different storylines going on at once, and if they just focused on one storyline, then it would have been so much better. I really enjoyed the Jenna Ortega storyline and wish that they just focused on that for the whole film rather than just doing bits and pieces here and there. It just felt very disjointed, and because there was so much going on, it made it hard to actually like enjoy one storyline. I did enjoy seeing the old characters as well as the new characters. I really liked the visuals, and I did like that we got to see more of the afterlife, especially more of these sandworms because they are my favourites. But I just really couldn't see myself watching this again. So next we have Speak No Evil. I gave this a 5 out of 10 as well, and I feel like I'm being generous with that. If you didn't know, this is actually a remake of a film that came out in 2022. We did not need a remake.
An American family and a British family meet on holiday and become friends with each other, so they plan to meet again soon. On the second meeting, the American family go to stay at the British family's secluded home, but they seem quite different from their first meeting.
I actually went to an early screening of this one, and the whole screening experience was so much fun, and I am so grateful that I got to go, but the film just really wasn't for me. I really do enjoy the original. It is very dark, gritty, stressful, weird, as well as being very hopeless and sad, but the remake feels like it is trying to do all these things, but it just feels forced. They do have so many similarities. They are almost the same film, so of course I am going to compare them both. The original is quite disturbing, especially the ending. I found with the remake they didn't really go there, and they completely changed the ending. I found the ending of the remake to just drag a bit. I did think the performances were good. Of course James McAvoy was a standout, but I do just feel like because we have the original, there is just no need for me to ever watch this remake when the original is just so much better. So next we have Humane, which I rated 6 out of 10. This was the directorial debut of Caitlin Cronenberg, which is David Cronenberg's daughter, which is one of the main reasons why I wanted to watch this film, because I love David Cronenberg's work so much, as well as his son Brandon Cronenberg. So I was really interested to see what work Caitlin Cronenberg would make.
Set in a dystopian reality where an environmental crisis is forcing humans to exterminate 20% of the population, people can offer up themselves to be killed for the greater good of the world, but a family end up in a crisis when things go wrong, and they end up in a situation where they have to choose one of them to be offered up and killed.
I did enjoy it, but I do feel like there wasn't as much happening as I was hoping for, and it just wasn't as good as I was hoping either. Next we have Infested, which I rated a 6 out of 10. This was a straight to Shudder release, which we do have quite a few of on this list.
This follows residents of an apartment building who have to fight for their lives when there is a sudden outbreak of deadly spiders. There are literally hundreds, if not thousands, and they are rapidly reproducing.
Before I watched this one, I saw a lot of people talking about it and hyping it up, so I think I may have set my expectations a little bit too high, because when I watched it I was a little bit disappointed, and I did find it a little bit boring at times. I think I definitely do need a rewatch for this one, because I remember not really being able to get into it. Next is a film that I haven't seen that many people talk about, and that is Double Blind. I rated this one a 6 out of 10.
A group of people agreed to take part in a paid experiment to test a new drug. Neither the participants or the researchers know what the drug does. Soon after the experiment starts, they realise that this new drug has a terrifying side effect. If participants fall asleep, then they will die.
I do really like films where the main plot is set around an experiment in a lab, especially if it's experimenting on human subjects. I find this premise really interesting, probably because I have a degree in psychology, so I'm naturally drawn to films like this. This was definitely entertaining and definitely had a fun storyline. It did lose me at a few moments, and it wasn't my favourite, but I could definitely see myself rewatching this one. Next is another film rated 6 out of 10, and that is Trap. This is M. Night's newest instalment, and it stars his daughter as the main lead. A lot of people were saying that this film is literally made so his daughter could get more recognised in the music industry, as so much of this film is literally just her singing singing on stage or performing, so I do definitely see where people are coming from on that one. But I think because I went in with such low expectations, when I actually saw the film, I was expecting it to be so much worse than it was, and I did actually end up enjoying it. It is probably one of M. Night's worst films.
A father takes his daughter to see her favourite singer in concert. They soon get word that the whole concert is actually a trap for a local serial killer, as they heard he was set to strike that night at the venue. Don't watch the trailer for this one if you haven't already seen it, as it does give away one of the biggest plot twists. The clips I show of the trailer won't give away any spoilers.
We have another Shudder release, and that is Daddy's Head. I rated this one a 7 out of 10.
A young boy says goodbye to his father just before he is taken off life support following a tragic accident. He is left to live with his stepmother, who he doesn't really have much of a bond with at all. The boy is struggling, having lost both of his parents now, and ends up getting an unexpected visitor.
I did put this one off for a while. I think the name kind of put me off, and I had low expectations. I'm not really sure why, but when I watched it, I was actually really pleasantly surprised. Another Shudder release that I rated 7 out of 10 is Mads. This horror film is really unique because it is actually just all one continuous shot, which is extremely impressive. It's done really well, and I particularly liked the title card shot. I thought that was really cool.
A boy stops off to get drugs before heading to a party. He tries a new pill and then unexpectedly picks up an injured woman whilst driving to the party.
Mads is quite a dark, more disturbing, stressful watch. Next is #Missing Couple, which I also rated 7 out of 10.
#Missing Couple follows a vlogging couple who are switching their van life for a new start renovating a secluded property. And of course this is a horror film, so strange things start happening at the new house. The horror elements really come in towards the end of this one.
I actually came across this on Tubi. I think it is a Tubi original, and I have recommended it so many times this year already. I absolutely love the found footage subgenre, so I just popped it on. I wasn't expecting too much, and I ended up being really surprised because it is actually a really good film, and I haven't heard anyone else speak about it. The next film is Arcadian, and I've rated this one a 7 out of 10 as well. This is a weird family survival creature feature horror film.
In this post-apocalyptic world, a father and his 2 sons have to fight against nocturnal, bloodthirsty creatures to survive.
There's something you need to know about me, and it is I love a Nicolas Cage horror film. If he's in a horror film, then I'm gonna watch it. I didn't expect too much from this one, but I actually ended up really enjoying it. The creature design is really cool, and they were actually really creepy. Next, we have another film that I've rated 7 out of 10, and that is Last Straw. This is a single location horror film set in a diner.
A young waitress ends up getting stuck inside a diner surrounded by masked criminals, threatening her every move.
This reminds me a bit of the film Open 24 Hours, with the setting being at night and kind of a similar location. I found it to be quite an entertaining watch. There isn't loads to it, but I feel like it went under the radar for horror films this year. So that is the end of part 1. I'm gonna have to stop it here because my camera keeps dying, and I feel like I've spoken so much. My throat is so dry, and I definitely need a break. Let me know what have been your favourites and your least favourite horror films from 2024 in the comments, and I will see you in part 2.